I wonder if anybody remembers the fire now, Jock.
No, it's very unlikely. People wandering along past Craigallon Loch today would just see an empty track. But way back then in the 20s, late 20s and early 30s, on a Sunday night you would find, anything up to 30 people sitting around this campfire just beside the track at Craigallon. And it's hard to believe that those things happened when you see it nowadays.
Do you remember the song that they used to sing?
Long may old Craigallon woods send forth abundance of her goods. May the fire be always lit so that we may come and sit.
Well, you were away pretty well every weekend in these days.
There was a period when I didn't miss a weekend in 5 years, in all kinds of weather, every time of year, in every season. And I couldn't stay at home. The only reason for staying at home would have been illness. And I was very fit in those days. I got fit just going away at weekends. In fact, with that kind of life, climbing every weekend and climbing in all your holidays, you got marvelously fit. I don't think there's an exercise that could beat it for exercising practically every muscle in your body, especially if you do rock climbing and snow climbing.
And you worked in a shop till late on a Saturday night?
Yes.
So you would get to Balmaha at midnight?
If you were lucky. Sometimes you missed the last bus at Canasburn Toll, and then you had to walk over the Stocky Muir through the night. That was a common occurrence. And also, of course, if you'd had a strenuous weekend, say in Ben Lomond, and you got back on a Sunday night to Balmaha and had missed the last bus, you had to walk again over the Stocky Muir Road, so back into Glasgow.
You got very little sleep then that weekend?
You got very little sleep indeed.
Bob, in the late 20s, you would be about 16.
Yeah.
You were working as an apprentice in Glasgow, but you had found Loch Lomond, indeed, you'd your stuff wrapped up in a ground sheet in the boat shed at Balmaha, marked Grieve, Mary Hill.
That's right.
You must have been here a great deal.
A lot, almost every weekend, yes. Either on the islands or on the mountains, you know.
And then when you finished your apprenticeship, you were unemployed.
Correct.
What happened then?
Well, naturally, I took to areas like this, you know. I mean, what was the point of hanging about street corners? I only went back to sign on at what was popularly known as the Baroo. And in between times, I tended to be here, sleeping in the shores, like this, beside a fire, you know, an old ground sheet and a blanket bag made out of a blanket sewed up, stuffed with Glasgow heralds.
And your ambition then was to be a good tramp?
A successful philosophical tramp, yes, that's right, yes. I had other aspirations, you see, had to be philosophical.
And it was then you became interested in the environment?
Yes, you see, I was then serving an apprenticeship as a civil engineer, and I had a whole lot of cognate subjects I had to study, like geology. And it was, you know, I saw the thing in action here. Slowly, the dawn of understanding. Why the mountains? What caused the loch? And the shapes of the mountains? And why the islands were there? And, you know, that kind of thing. Even making a fire, you realize the whole range of movements that had created a tree. And here I was burning it. The end of one cycle and the ashes were the beginning of the other. I mean, this was the kind of thing that you began to understand on the ground, that kind of thing.
And this led you towards your life's work?
That's correct, there's no doubt about it. I mean, looking back, I'm absolutely clear about that.
And in your time, you've been the Chief Technical Planner for Scotland.
Yes.
You've been the Chairman of the Highlands and Islands Development Board.
Yeah.
You're now Professor Sir Robert Grieve, retired, but the President of the Friends of Loch Lomond, a society dedicated to seeing that the right things happen in Loch Lomond and to fight the things that you feel will irreparably damage Loch Lomond.
Yes, that's right. I mean, I suppose you become kind of anonymous in a job like that, become a kind of super bureaucrat, so to speak. But I feel now at my age and with all the background of all this, that, you know, as a person, I feel I have to come out in the open and sort of take a position on this, Tom. You know. we've discussed this. And to make the point that it is so unique that it requires very special handling. I mean, damn it, we've done so much damage in the past. Let's not do it again.
And these days, Jock, you travelled very light. You didn't even carry a blanket.
We didn't carry a blanket. We didn't operate from a fixed base. If we were on holiday, for example, we just carried all our gear in our rucksack. We travelled as lightly as we possibly could. We just carried food. We carried plenty of food and a change of clothing, a spare sweater. And that was about all you carried. And when you settled down at night, you just stuck your feet into your pack. It wasn't a rucksack in those days, it was a knapsack, old army stock. And you pulled on an extra sweater, and you were quite happy. You always kept a fire going at night.
And you started the first working man's mountaineering club about when was it? 1930?
1930, we started a club called the Ptarmigan. We didn't call it after the shoulder of Ben Lomond, which is known as ptarmigan. We called it after the bird, the ptarmigan, because we kept running into this little bird up in the mountain tops in the wildest of weather. And we admired the ptarmigan, and we called the club the Ptarmigan.
And you made friends with the people on the other side of the mountain. Tell me about the bugle.
Oh, yes.
That became a legend.
We made friends with, yes, this was a shepherd who lived in Glendew, on the north side of Ben Lomond. And one of our party, Bill Dugan, had a bugle. And we were very friendly with the shepherd's wife. And the idea was that when we were going down the north corrie of the Ben, Bill would blow this bugle. And they could hear it nearly 3,000 feet below us. And Mrs. Campbell would know we were coming down the corrie. She would get out the girdle, get the scones going and the pancakes, and have a big pot of tea ready for us when we get down. It was marvellous.
Bob Grieve wrote the greater part of this book, the Clyde Valley Regional Plan, in 1946. It was a vision of a more leisured future for urban living folk who would need the countryside more and more.
The whole thing about Loch Lomond in that book was to demonstrate, and in fact for all the countryside round Glasgow, that we had made one hell of a mess of a place like Clydeside and of Glasgow, which had been a beautiful little city in the 18th century. Were we going to do the same thing with Loch Lomond? I mean, if you looked at some of the Italian lakes, built from end to end, only in a sense are they elevated because of the climate. Here, you could wreck this place, you know. In 10 years, you could have wrecked it. The whole southern end of Loch Lomond there was actually zoned for bungalows at 4 to the acre, where you lived, Gartaharn, from Balloch right along to Drummond. This is what we were afraid of, and of speculative building up the loch, up that beautiful west side there, dotted away up the east side to Rowerdennan. Quite easily could have been like that. And this plan was to show why it should not be and how the thing should be organised and planned to keep this as a superb piece of Highland wilderness, in a sense.
And now, after 30 years of neglect of that plan, we're coming back to it again.
Yes, in a sense, although I must say, you know, one has to say that the planning machine, by and large, has preserved a lot of Loch Lomond. It preserved the south end there. It stopped the whole idea of development there. But there's enough bad things have been done to make you worry. Let's put it that way.
And to you, it's still a miraculous place.
To me, it's unbeatable. It's the nearest thing to perfection, I would say. It's a masterpiece, like a great painting. And it's something that I would hate to see damaged in any way, just as I would hate to see a great painting damaged. And that is always the danger with modern developments. Somebody building a new straight road somewhere, or a pipeline down a hillside. To me, that's like somebody ripping a marvellous canvas.